The following episode can be viewed on the YouTube channel Bernie or Bust Television. Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. I was mentioned by name in this Wall Street Journal article, and I'm still trying to decide if that's a good thing. I'm not a subscriber any longer to the Wall Street Journal, but we did receive a PDF copy of this article, so let me know if you'd like to read it. Betsy Morris jumped in her car and drove up to Ithaca, New York, and interviewed Victor Tiffany, the OG of the Bernie or Bust movement. We thought maybe we'd get some good publicity out of this, we being Revolt Against Plutocracy. But Betsy's angle was she was trying to use scare tactics to show how we might be unduly influencing the election. I guess legacy media want to corner the market on unduly influencing elections, and they don't like it when the worker bees get out of hand and try to do it also. Members of Sanders' online army ready to fight on. With the odds quickly growing against Senator Bernie Sanders' bid for the Democratic presidential nomination, some in his army of online advocates are vowing to continue the fight even if he drops out, attacking Joe Biden and threatening to back a third-party candidate. Victor Tiffany helps lead that loosely connected digital militia from an aging desktop computer in his upstairs home office here in Ithaca. The 64-year-old IT technician and protest movement veteran runs a Bernie or Bust network that has been a potent force during the nominating process, with massive social media campaigns against Mr. Sanders' rival candidates, including sometimes vicious memes spread across platforms such as Facebook. Well, dear viewers and listeners, you've seen the most vicious of memes on this show, so you can judge for yourselves how vicious they are. The scale and intensity of Mr. Tiffany's network has drawn the attention of researchers. He has roughly 4,000 Facebook friends and belongs to 570 Facebook groups where he can easily get messages supporting Mr. Sanders in front of thousands of viewers, said Trevor Davis, a research professor at George Washington University and head of Counteraction, an online intelligence company. Counteraction. That's interesting, Trevor. Very interesting. So you're countering democratic-minded citizens who are countering plutocratic, oligarchic media. So that means you're working for the plutocratic, oligarchic media, right? Am I right, Trevor? That's good that George Washington University is paying somebody to do that sort of thing. This is sort of like the Russian scare, only they've figured out that we're not actually Russians. Using such networks, Mr. Davis said, Mr. Tiffany and others can amplify messages by spreading them widely and quickly. In a 90-day period, Mr. Tiffany's friends have posted a total of more than 165,282 times to groups directly reaching some 19 million people, excluding reshares into additional groups. I guess our most vicious memes that are delightful to some of us will get shared even more than that. Horror of horrors! So I guess inquiring minds want to know. I really have to know, though, where the money comes to fund people like this to study us. It's just nice to know that we're making our oligarchic enemy nervous. Yesterday, we were talking about how YouTube's algorithms are making it more difficult for non-authoritative news sites to have any kind of traction on YouTube. Here's a little bit of smearing from Columbia University. Facebook's groups have shifted the online political battleground on the platform since the 2016 election, according to Jonathan Albright, director of the Digital Forensics Initiative at Columbia Journalism's Tao Center for Digital Journalism. Now I wonder who a director of digital forensics thinks he's working for. Does he think he's working on behalf of the people or on behalf of our owners? Dr. Albright goes on, instead of public postings, those groups are often private, making it harder to detect the source of misinformation, hyper-partisan news, and conspiracy theories, he found in an analysis 2 years ago. I don't know about you, but it makes it seem as though he is assuming that these private Facebook groups are spreading misinformation, hyper-partisan news, and conspiracy theories as a matter of course. That sounds like good journalism there. After Super Tuesday voting that put Mr. Biden ahead of Mr. Sanders in the delegate count, Mr. Tiffany took to Twitter more than 24 times to tweet or retweet messages and memes attacking Mr. Biden and the Democratic National Committee. Oh no! I think this is what really bothers them. Mr. Tiffany is trying to get Mr. Sanders' supporters to pledge not to back Mr. Biden if he is the nominee and instead to vote for a third-party candidate. Ding, ding, ding! The morning after the Michigan primary, memes from Mr. Tiffany's network such as "I'm staying home unless the nominee is Bernie" and "Bernie or else" flooded Twitter. His email list of 53,000 supporters, he says, includes those who have pledged, some as far back as the 2016 race, to shun the Democratic nominee if it isn't Mr. Sanders. A spokesman for the Sanders campaign declined to comment for this article. Mr. Sanders has said he would work to get the Democrat nominee elected even if he loses. He also told us not to listen to him. Mr. Tiffany and some of his collaborators, including Millersville University music professor Alan Howell, have two principal adversaries, supporters of rival campaigns and efforts by social media companies to curb their kind of orchestrated campaign efforts. We wouldn't want an army of regular people to be able to talk back to their masters too much, now would we? This next part really kills me. Companies such as Facebook and Twitter Inc. have announced measures to battle manipulation and coordinated inauthentic behavior as they crack down on people artificially gaming their systems to win a broader audience. Okay, Betsy, the way you worded that either implies that you are a hack or the marketing teams of Facebook and Twitter are hacks. But either way, that's pretty hacky. Manipulation and coordinated inauthentic behavior. If you want inauthentic behavior, I'd say that David Brock and his army of Hillary bot astroturfers is a lot less authentic than what we're doing. We're actually people, and we actually believe what we're saying. How's that for authentic? So Facebook and Twitter is cracking down on people artificially again, gaming their systems to win a broader audience. Facebook, for instance, has rules that prohibit posting and sharing at high volumes and frequency without detailing where it draws the line. Mr. Tiffany says those efforts are inconsistently applied. Rules? I've never seen them, he said. Mr. Howell, that's Dr. Howell to you, Betsy, recently posted a tutorial on YouTube titled Facebook Guerrilla Tactics 101. In it, he provides a list of more than 600 pro-Bernie groups and advises joining as many as possible, but not more than 50 a day, he warns, saying that's a red flag to Facebook. Such steps are designed to avoid having Facebook suspend an account, something he and Mr. Tiffany call being put in Facebook jail. Mr. Howell's tutorial includes a method of mass posting that he says Facebook won't detect. Users that have joined and posted into groups can re-edit those posts, pasting in new pro-Sanders content and add a comment, he says, bumping the message to the top of the community's feed, drawing eyeballs. Messages can be spread across many groups, sometimes under aliases and on platforms other than Facebook, Mr. Howell said in an interview. Yeah, Betsy is a hack. She interviewed me and we talked about political issues, mostly. It was very stealthily done. She made it seem like she cared about my political views, when actually all she cared about was my Facebook tactics. Again, Betsy, I'm really glad that we're scaring you. I hope we can scare you enough that you'll start to report on Biden's dementia and maybe make it clear to your readers that he has no chance in hell of defeating Donald Trump because of the swing voters that I was telling you about in this interview who live in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania who won't vote for a corporate sock puppet candidate. Where did that part go? Where did that statement that I made to you go in your interview? Wall Street Journal, Betsy Morris equals hack. Hack, 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 hack. And the professors from Columbia and George Washington University, you've got some answering to do also. Such patriots you are. Such advocates for liberty and freedom and removing the thumbs of oppression from off of our puny skulls. Talk about selling out. I guess inquiring minds want to know. The inquiring minds of our masters want to know. Meanwhile, in other news, we've got some grave problems with our Democratic Party. Millions of us are getting ready to defect, and Tulsi Gabbard's defection from sanity is one of the reasons why. People who aren't getting paid to report their news are pretty unified in the idea that Tulsi is a sellout, and the Democratic Party is a sellout. And if we want the Democratic Party to do anything democratic, we may need to blow it up and start over from scratch.
And I had an interview with this woman, Jackie Salet, who's the president of independentvoter.org, who's been working in independent politics for 20 years or more. And she's just like, this notion that you can pull the Democratic Party to the left never works. It never works. Lefty progressives, we need to leave. You cannot, we need to leave this party, because even AOC is starting to buckle to Pelosi. I mean, like, yeah. And the thing that I've said that you've said, I've never been like, this is my guy, or I'm a Tulsi tell it ride or die, or Bernie ride or die. Because it's at some point, especially after what happened Tuesday, now for her to say, Tulsi to say, well, Tuesday's the writing's on the wall. Half the population didn't go out and vote because we're in a pandemic. Ohio moved its primary. The Democratic Party's been cheating left and right, and Bernie won't call that out. Bernie, so this party, I mean, it's a matter of time before Bernie goes, my friend Joe Biden is our best chance to beat Trump. And it's like right now, what Trump is doing in the middle of this pandemic is he's actually offering things that Obama should have done during the financial crisis.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
It's unreal.
It's unbelievable. Trump is actually calling, which, by the way, I mean, it was, people like Tulsi Gabbard were talking about an emergency UBI first. I mean, even Andrew Yang was mentioning it. And meanwhile, the establishment Democrats are talking about low interest loans for small businesses. And Trump actually wants to put money in people's hands. It's unbelievable. It's like upside down land, dude. It is so. And by the way, and now people like Trump is coming off smelling like a rose simply for calling for the most basic of things you would try to do during a pandemic like this.
Upside down land, indeed. Yeah, Bernie's idea that we're going to hijack the Democratic Party and move it to the left, I'm not seeing it. Now, the talking points have moved to the left. We got to give Bernie that. But Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Tom Perez have no intention of doing anything even vaguely leftist. Trump and Mitt Romney are decidedly to their left right now. I mentioned in a Medium article that maybe we should try to hijack the Republican Party instead, but probably we'll need to hijack both parties. And I'm getting more and more enamored of the idea that a general work stoppage is the way to get this to happen, rather than trying to vote our way into power. And by we, I mean the American worker. I don't mean Russian bots. I don't mean inauthentic Facebook and Twitter users. I mean we the people, the American people. We're the ones who need to flex our muscles and take back our government. If, by the way, you want to join me in my Facebook endeavors, leave a comment underneath and I'll hook you up. Ron and Graham are right that Bernie soon will probably tell us to vote for Joe Biden, which isn't going to happen. And that's where we start to look at our lefty pundits and we start to sniff. Who's paying our lefty pundits? Everybody's getting paid by somebody, and when some of our favorite lefty pundits and politicians start to tell us to vote for corporate sock puppets, we've got to wonder who's paying them. Tulsi is telling us to vote for a warmonger. Why is that? Bernie's going to tell us to vote for a warmonger. Why is that? Cenk and Anna are probably going to tell us to vote for a warmonger. Why is that?
There are a lot of people with selective memories. I don't know if they're doing this on purpose. This whole thing about people not being ruthless enough. No, Anna, TYT is not ruthless. You guys, I don't know if you believe this or not, but you guys part of the problem, okay? Because you pose like you're activists, but you're not. See, like, you're not an activist channel. You're not really an advocate for Bernie. You're just a network that wants viewership, and so. This whole segment feels like Cenk, especially from Cenk, it's like a Trojan horse just to pivot till everybody get behind Biden, which Cenk will be saying next week. If he's not saying it already, Johnson, he'll be saying, get behind Joe Biden, because he never was fully on board. See, what Bernie needed was people fully on board who had more reach than Tim Black. That's what Bernie needed.
But Tim Black, it would help if you would tell us to be Bernie or bust. It would help if you could say actively, Bernie or bust is the way to go to combat sheepdogs like Cenk Uygur, who are getting paid by Jeffrey Katzenberg and the Clinton machine.
Bernie couldn't get that because people with more reach just want more money.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. Some people are in it. They're legit. They're gospel. You know what I'm saying? They're on point. I'm not knocking everybody, but you guys are the biggest, and you wouldn't fully throw your weight totally behind. You always hedged with Elizabeth Warren, and you got food. So when Jack says people later in this segment, Jack's like, what you're saying is, you're saying I got food, and Jack's like, yeah, I'm sorry to say it, but yeah, you got duped. No, Jack, you duped yourself.
Yeah.
And you got duped. You kept saying that Elizabeth Warren was progressive. And now instead of saying you were wrong, that Elizabeth Warren doesn't support the most progressive candidate, that she, in fact, tacitly, she endorsed Biden by not endorsing Bernie. See, when she stayed in the race and pushed votes away from Bernie, she was basically endorsing Biden. She helped Biden by staying in the race. She helped the establishment candidate by staying in the race, splitting the vote with the progressives. It's not hard to do. You get it, Jake. I know you already know it, and I know you already know it. The fact that neither one of you said it in this segment says a lot about you.
Very good. So what says a lot about all of us is whether we're going to advocate voting for a plutocratic, oligarchic sock puppet who has dementia. The next few weeks will tell you a lot about your favorite lefty pundits. You may not see their tax returns. You may not know exactly where their bread is buttered. But if you want to keep following a true leftist, don't follow anyone who's telling you to vote for Joe Biden. And refrain from supporting any lefty pundits who have ever tried to tell you to vote for Elizabeth Warren, or who now may be trying to apologize for Tulsi Gabbard. Don't go there. If they tell you we need to be pragmatic and we need to have a Biden-Kamala ticket, don't go for that. Nor go for a Biden-Warren ticket. Nor for a Biden-Klobuchar ticket, nor for a Biden-Tulsi ticket. Don't do it. Don't go there. We don't need this doddering warmonger at the top of the ticket, period. Anyone who tells you to do such things is a sheepdog. The official bad guy of the day. Notes from the Edge of the Narrative Matrix by Caitlin Johnstone. Missing the cute, innocent days of early 2020 when our biggest concern was just that the continent of Australia would burn to ashes and Trump would start a full-scale war with Iran? Everyone's been primed by years of popular post-apocalyptic movies/shows, as well as a growing sense of dread and a general intuition that something's gotta give soon. Please stay calm and let your better nature win out, humans. We can use this opportunity to transcend ourselves. The political media class is largely responsible for its own inability to get the public to take this pandemic seriously. You can't constantly lie to people about important issues their entire lives and then expect them to suddenly trust you. The primary reason people are so vulnerable to propaganda is that hardly anyone clearly sees just how much human consciousness is dominated by mental narrative. That's a night and day difference between reality and the stories minds tell about reality. Manipulators exploit this. Most people assume that the mental stories in their heads are an accurate reflection of what's happening outside their skull, and it just isn't. Manipulators know they can just feed people stories, narratives about what's happening, and they'll accept those narratives as reality. Manipulators know they can trade a bunch of convincing words in exchange for all sorts of real valuables: sex, deals, loyalty, votes, political power. Humanity's diluted relationship with narrative means you can get real, concrete treasures in exchange for pure illusion. Most of the things which consume your attention are pure narrative constructs. Religion, philosophy, culture, politics, the economy, even what you take to be your very self. But few ever take the time to sift these narratives apart from reality, so we're hackable by manipulators. Are you listening, boomers? The difference between what's happening and what the babbling mind says is happening could not possibly be more different. Until our species evolves a new relationship with mental narrative which allows a real relationship with the real world, we'll keep moving toward extinction. Here are some examples of that disconnect. Obvious cognitive decline is a stutter. Massive exit poll discrepancies are normal. An ex-president installing his right-hand man as his successor is democracy. Facts are Kremlin talking points. Journalism is a crime. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. I've been saying the US is more evil and violent than China for years, and the shrill, hysterical responses I've been receiving when I say this over the last few days have been exponentially more intense than they've ever been at any other time. China hasn't gotten any worse during that time. The propaganda has. All this shrieking about the virus originating in China does nothing to help address the actual virus, and it isn't meant to. It's meant to manufacture consent for future unrelated, pre-planned escalations against America's chief geopolitical rival. People are being trained to support those escalations. Someone who bought the propaganda about Russia is dumb, like a guy with his head up his ass. Someone who rejected the propaganda on Russia but bought into it on China is even dumber, like a guy who pulled his head out of his ass, lubed up his scalp, and willfully reinserted it. Well, at least, Kate, he used lube the second time. Officials know they've got a few months where there won't be any public backlash in the form of demonstrations and protests due to coronavirus fears, and it's a safe bet that they'll take that fact into account when planning decisions in the near future. Assange's extradition hearing resumes in May, and the DNC convention is in July, just for example. I don't know, Kate. I think what they should worry about is mass work stoppages. Just calling in sick for a week or two would do it. If your finger is on the pulse of the general unrest in the United States and around the world, I think you'll assume that maybe things are going to start happening sooner rather than later. China has not changed. What's changed is that the USA's leading rival is poised to surpass a dying empire, which will need to take some drastic actions in order to prevent this. Consent for these actions must first be manufactured, hence the sudden spike in narrative management. China has always had an authoritarian government. If you find yourself thinking negatively about the Chinese government more than you did a year or two ago, it's not because China changed during that time, it's because you've been sucked in by an escalating propaganda campaign. China is getting its COVID problem under control and helping other nations, while American preachers are telling their underinsured parishioners to come to the megachurch and shake hands with everyone. This virus could change the world a lot more than we think. It's the perfect storm for ending the hegemony of the US, a nation with a broken healthcare system, dependent on private corporations to make anything happen, full of individualists who reject any collectivist impulse, and fundamentalists who think science is a liberal hoax. Democrats. Trump is an unprecedented threat to our democracy because he's a vulgar, racist, jingoistic, authoritarian, reactionary wingnut with dementia who lies constantly. Those same Democrats. Here, vote for this vulgar, racist, jingoistic, authoritarian, reactionary wingnut with dementia who lies constantly. The Democratic primary is clearly being tampered with in myriad ways and on multiple levels, both overtly and covertly. The general election will not be, because the dominant power structures know they'll get exactly what they want with either Biden or Trump. So Betsy Morris of the Wall Street Journal is complaining that regular citizens are trying to untamper the system. We're trying to put up some kind of a counter to what the oligarchic media are doing. We're also trying to put up a counter to what the corrupt DNC is doing. But we're the inauthentic ones tampering with democracy. When I was 5, I had a friend who would be the judge to whatever game we were playing, and whenever I started to win, she would judge that I was actually not winning. I stopped playing with her. Progressives are correct that the Dems will never stop fucking them over if they keep unconditionally supporting that party. But what many of them fail to take into account is that the Dems will also keep fucking them over if they don't support the party, because they're fine with losing. Progressives assume that they have negotiating power because they assume wrongly that the Democratic Party exists to win elections. It doesn't. The Democratic Party exists first and foremost to sabotage the left. That's pretty good, Kate. We can't really get the DNC-controlled opposition party to do what we want it to do by threatening to leave. Our false underlying assumption is that the DNC wants to win elections. They don't want to win elections. They just want to be controlled opposition to the Republican Party. They want to incrementally do nothing, They want to keep the American workers subjugated, and they don't care if they lose. That's where the idea of a general strike becomes more and more attractive. A Democratic Party leader retains their status and donors regardless of who wins an election, but if the left ever succeeded in taking over the party and implementing anti-oligarchic policies, that would end. Given this, who do you think party leaders perceive as the real threat? Staying with the Dems is a losing strategy, but so is removing your votes with the hopes of influencing them. This is because the answer has never been in electoral politics one way or the other. It's an illusory construct built to distract from reality. So Caitlin Johnstone's idea of narrative management applies very well to what Crystal Ball on Hill Rising is about to say.
It's easy for liberals to see the way that right-wing media helped foment the conditions for Trump. They fed panic about immigrant crime and racist conspiracies about Obama's birthplace and existentialism about how liberals were the greatest threat to their lives. Trump was the perfect candidate to fully articulate the narrative that they had promoted over years. In the same way, though, CNN and MSNBC have created the perfect fertile ground for a corporatist civility candidate who promises nothing more than defeating Trump, but ultimately will fail at that for the same reason that the media has failed at defeating Trump, because their elite fixations and inability to understand the real reasons why Trump has appeal prevent them from making an effective case with credible actors. Now, look, none of this is to make excuses for Team Bernie and the rapid turn of events that we've seen in the past week. But if there's one thing we've learned, it is the absolute central importance of frickin' cable news. Can you imagine a sadder thing? That all of the organizing and the door knocking and the phone calling can be overcome by a few days of cable news coverage? It makes sense, though.
It does make sense. But it isn't just a few days of coverage that did it. It was also all of the preparation that Kate mentioned over many years. We were set up. Boomers were set up. We've bought into the narrative that they've been managing all along, and then it just took a few days because we were already set up. So what are we to do, dear viewers and listeners? At the very least, we should take the Bernie or Bust pledge. We should go to BernieOrBust2020.us. That's BernieOrBust2020.us and take the Bernie or Bust pledge. You could join the Facebook/Twitter army that we're leading at Revolt Against Plutocracy. You could help us get out the word that a lot of us aren't going to be voting for Biden in the general election. Obviously, we're scaring the oligarchs who are paying journalism professors to look into what we're doing. Now, I advocate for labor strikes and unduly, inauthentically influencing elections. My tongue is in my cheek. Can you see? I don't think we're unduly, inauthentically influencing anything. And if you want to help me, let me know in the comments below. In the information section below is a link to my Facebook account, so feel free to contact me that way as well. We need to get busy here, dear viewers and listeners. We need to roll up our sleeves and get busy. Get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Come get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Oh, get on board the Bernie or Bust train. The preceding episode can be viewed on the YouTube channel Bernie or Bust Television.